This is a story I heard from a friend about a spooky experience at a hotel in the United States, though it sounds a bit cliché. The protagonist of the story is a friend of my friend, whom we'll call Mr. John Smith. Mr. Smith is a mechanical equipment salesman who often has to travel for work. One time, his work took him to Lincoln, Nebraska. Lincoln is the capital of Nebraska and the state's second-largest city, known for its tourist attractions like the state capitol and the Lincoln Children's Zoo. Upon arriving in Lincoln, since it was the tourist season, most of the hotels were fully booked. After some effort, Mr. Smith finally found a business motel that looked somewhat outdated. Although he could sense an unusual and unsettling atmosphere, he thought it might just be because he was tired. Having no other options, he decided to stay there for the night. Since he had an important meeting early the next day, he quickly finished the check-in process and went to bed early. However, in the middle of the night, he was suddenly awakened by knocking sounds. Groggily, he went to the door and asked who it was. When he opened the door, he found the hallway empty, leaving behind an eerie silence. Thinking he might have heard wrong, Mr. Smith went back to bed to continue sleeping. But soon after, the knocking started again. This time he was more alert but still found no one. The situation repeated several times until it stopped at around 4 in the morning, allowing him to finally get some sleep. The next morning, Mr. Smith complained about his experience to the hotel front desk. Although the hotel staff apologized, Mr. Smith felt they were hiding something. Upon his insistence, the hotel manager personally came to explain the truth to him. A few years ago, a fire broke out in the hotel. Although most of the guests were evacuated in time, a few unfortunately perished, including a guest staying in Mr. Smith's room. The guest, who was in deep sleep, did not hear the alarm, and by the time he realized the danger, the room was filled with thick smoke, and he collapsed in front of the door. Hearing this, Mr. Smith was left speechless. He then realized that the knocking throughout the night came not from outside the door, but from the inside. This is a supernatural story I experienced while staying at a motel near a train station in New York City, USA. The motel is no longer in business now. My first visit to that motel was many years ago when I went to NYC to visit a friend. I was deeply impressed by their breakfast because it was delicious. Later on, when my company sent me to New York on a business trip, I remembered that motel and its unforgettable breakfast, so I booked a room there. I arrived in New York a few days early, and my friend came specifically to pick me up. We happily chatted about recent happenings on our way to the motel. The motel's policy didn't allow non-guests into the rooms, but since I hadn't reached the scheduled check-in time yet, they temporarily allowed my friend to stay with me in the room for a while. It was a very small single room with dim lighting that felt oppressive even during the day. After a brief chat and setting down my luggage, my friend and I went out to have fun until I returned to the motel alone in the evening. Exhausted from the day's activities, I took a shower and went to bed. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a strange sound that seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the room. The layout of my room was such that there was a narrow corridor leading to the room, with the bathroom on the right and a row of windows at the end. The bed was next to the corridor. It sounded like the noise was coming from the direction of the bathroom. I was very tired but felt uneasy about the noise. I got up to turn on the light but found nothing. Overcome by fatigue, I went back to bed. After turning off the light, the noise came again. I tried to get up and went straight to the door to check without turning on the light, only to find the hallway empty, which scared me a bit. So, I drank a cup of coffee trying to calm myself down. As I sat drinking the coffee, the noise came again, seeming to come from the direction of the bathroom door. When I looked towards the bathroom door, it seemed like there was a black shadow squeezing out from underneath it, making that squeaking sound. That thing trying to squeeze out shocked me. I stared at it in horror, wanting to scream but couldn't. I wanted to get up, but felt as though I was nailed to the chair, unable to move, thinking to myself that this was bad. Just then, the thing slowly slid out from the crack of the bathroom door, and when it noticed me, it suddenly stopped moving. We stared at each other for a few seconds before it quickly retracted back into the bathroom. This terrified me, so I turned on all the lights in the room and blocked the bathroom door with a chair. Although I intended not to sleep all night, I eventually fell asleep out of sheer exhaustion. The next morning, the atmosphere in the room had changed. The sunlight was soft, marking a beautiful morning. I checked the bathroom, of course, finding nothing. I wanted to ask the front desk if anything had happened in that room when I checked out, but ultimately didn't ask. On the train back, I started feeling unwell and felt uncomfortable for some time, but the doctors couldn't find any reason. Although I have completely recovered now, I still can't explain what I saw that night. Whenever I think back to that black shadow trying to squeeze out of the bathroom door, and that weird black face, I still get shivers down my spine. This is a story told by my friend's father after he had been drinking. Mr. Mike, my friend's father, still can't forget the series of bizarre events he encountered that night. About 20 years ago, Mr. Mike and his friends went on a trip to a small town in California, USA. At that time, the town was a tourist hotspot, known for its beaches and hot springs. This was an era before the internet was widespread, and people traveled just to enjoy the natural scenery and experience the local culture. That night, after dinner, Mr. Mike and his friends went to soak in the hot springs before returning to their room to play cards for entertainment. While playing, Mr. Mike noticed two children, who looked like elementary school students, running back and forth outside the window, although he could only see their heads from the window. Since they were a group of adults traveling together, he was sure these children weren't with any of them. Initially, he thought the balcony of the room next to theirs was connected to theirs, and thought it was normal to see children playing there. However, when Mr. Mike decided to go out to the balcony for a smoke, he discovered their room didn't have a balcony at all. He asked if anyone else had seen the children, but everyone said no. That night, Mr. Mike went to sleep filled with fear. He felt uneasy because he was the only one who had seen these eerie things. Soon, the door handle started making noises as if someone was trying to come in. Mr. Mike gathered his courage to check the door, only to find the hallway empty. Just as he was about to go back to bed, the door handle rattled again. This time, he got up and opened the door to see a janitor lady standing at the opposite door with her head down, then slowly walking past. Mr. Mike couldn't see her face clearly. Thinking the janitor was causing trouble, he called out loudly to her, but the lady didn't respond and turned to run. Mr. Mike decided to chase after her, but no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't catch up with the nimble janitor. When she ran to the stairwell and went up, Mr. Mike followed her all the way until he saw the lady go straight through the locked rooftop exit door and disappear. When Mr. Mike stood by the emergency exit, terrified, he saw through the window the janitor suddenly appear with a horrifying, ghastly face. For the next few days, even though they stayed in the same hotel, Mr. Mike would hear someone tampering with his room's door handle every night, an experience he would never forget. This is what happened to me and my junior descendant. In the United States, we have an area called Bird Valley District, which is one of the quietest places along the New York State High Line. Since colonial times, it has been a custom area. Today, many entertainment streets still exist, and it serves as a gateway to the modern red light district. I don't need to go into the history of this place, as those who are interested can look it up online. In short, Bird Valley District is a famous nightlife area in New York City, which is why there are many thematic motels around the Bird Valley District railway station. The streets there are old, and it's common to see men entering motels alone, seeking certain services, which is a peculiar sight. However, Bird Valley District during the day is suitable for tourism, near the New York Historical Museum in Central Park, making it a good place to stroll and explore, so don't think of it as a bad area. That day, my junior and I went to Bird Valley District looking for something exciting. We had heard that the motels in Bird Valley District all have a booklet listing various services, and if you see something you like, you can directly contact it by phone. However, there have been several cases of female service workers being murdered at night in the motels of Bird Valley District, so the staff do not like this place, and only the women in very difficult situations come to work here. Upon arriving, we first decided to find a motel. After winding through the complex narrow streets, we found a cheap establishment with an old man sitting at the front desk who looked very unfriendly. He gave us some very old facilities and reluctantly handed us the keys to the room. Once in the room, we started flipping through the booklet looking for shops, but found nothing of interest. We decided to rest for a while and then go home. Just as I was about to lie down to rest, my junior suddenly asked if he could stay in the same room, saying he would sleep on the sofa. I immediately guessed his thoughts. He had mentioned before that he was very sensitive to these special perceptions. He explained why, saying he had a bad feeling about this motel. So he brought his things over and lay down on the sofa. We talked for a while and eventually fell asleep. Then I had a dream where I was in the room and the door was ajar, allowing light to come through and make the room look eerie. Felt like it was being recorded by a camera. Then I realized it was just a dream and woke up. When I woke up, I looked around the room and everything was the same as in the dream. At that moment, my junior turned over and began to struggle frantically, screaming in terror. I finally woke him up, and he explained to me that he had a dream where a woman with black hair and no eyes walked in from outside the door and came close to smell him. I realized my dream was connected to my junior's and felt chills. We checked out immediately, but when I told the old man at the front desk, he only said that the motel had been in business for 50 years. Since that day, my junior has become a little abnormal, being overly sensitive to his own scent, leading directly to a kind of mental illness where he remains troubled by that day's experience. Although I'm not sure of the truth about the woman in the dream, I suspect that she might be the soul of a woman who met her fate in the motel, remaining there and appearing in rooms at night searching for her perpetrator.